What remains human in an inhuman world? The will to live, the right to die. A multi-dimensional explosion hurled the starship's few passengers across the galaxies and onto an uncharted barren tundra. With no technical skills and scant supplies, the survivors face a bleak end in an alien world. One brave woman held the daring answer, but it was the most desperate one possible. So I want to talk today about something strange that has happened, which is maybe not so surprising because so many of these videos have been focused on the events of the blurring here in Stone's Way. It's winter, when many people take advantage of the snow and the ice to have fun outside, by skiing, ice skating, ice fishing, snowmobiling, and so on. Outside of town, there are snowmobile tracks everywhere, usually running alongside roads next to the farms. One often sees groups of 4 and 5 people racing across the snow, grinning and shouting to each other in the blinding white and sky-blue light of midday. There are also night riders. It's somewhat more dangerous than riding during the day, but not as much as one might think. On a night when the moon is out, the snowy terrain is often well enough lit, although shadows can cast strange effects. So here is where the story starts, as you might have expected. A group of teenagers was out recently. There were 4 of them, racing along in a group under a gibbous moon. They could see for miles, they say, in blue-white light, until an aberrant cloud passed across the moon, throwing the fields into darkness. Their leader, one Hartley Thorpe, captain of her hockey team, put up one hand to slow the pace. Glancing behind her, she saw her friends, Kelly, Ben, Cass, and one other further back. Her heart skipped a beat. You see, there's a story in our town about a ghost, that of a boy who lost his life back in the 70s, snowmobiling during a freak snowstorm on a Halloween night, inappropriately clad because of his costume. He was out with a group of friends who seemed always to be getting a little bit further ahead of him, somewhere out in front, as the snow whipped into his eyes. He kept gunning his snowmobile to catch up, but the faster he went, the farther away they seemed to be. Of course, they hadn't actually been pulling away from him. Instead, he had pulled away from them, having lost the trail. He wasn't found until 4 days later, seated upright on his snowmobile, but leaning down into the wind in the middle of a field several miles from where anyone expected him to be. He was frozen solid to his seat. His hands were blue on the handlebars, one hand twisting the throttle to full. The snowmobile was out of gas. So now you can understand why Hartley's heart skipped a beat. She had heard stories that this boy might appear on certain nights, and if he caught up, well, nobody had survived to tell that tale. What commenced then was a wild ride across the countryside. Hartley made a frantic pointing gesture behind the group, and all saw the cause of her alarm. She then wound up her arm to signal full speed ahead, and so she took off, much faster than she should have been going in the dark of the night. I'll save you some suspense and let you know right away that the kids got away. And luckily, there was no tragedy to end this story. Hartley led her group in a wide circle around the Halverson farm, then across the open fields down to Wet Owl Pond, which is frozen over this time of year, finally back to her own house. They left their follower behind somewhere near the pond. The next day, in the bright of a polar cold day, under a pale sun and 2 shining sundogs, she and her friends backtracked their wild ride from the night before. To their amazement, they found something like an ice sculpture on the pond, roughly shaped, but like enough to a boy on a snowmobile, leaning down as if he was racing as fast as he could go. They say the sun was causing a strange effect, melting the ice from 2 pits in the crowning sphere of the sculpture, the part that looked like a head, although nothing should have been melting in the coldness of that day. It looked to them like the ice sculpture was crying. I've heard that these kids made a promise that day, one that they've kept. So now, if you happen to drive out toward Wet Owl Pond on a moonlit night, and you wait, and maybe wait some more, you might see some snowmobilers out on the fields, and if you count the riders, Sometimes you'll see 4 and other times 5 in a group, calling out to each other and whooping.